Greetings, sisters and brothers. This is Milton Ali Mahdi, publisher and editor of Black Star News. It's November 21st, and I'm updating you from New York City on the case involving alleged payment by two individuals of a bribe to the president of Chad, Idriss Debby, and to Uganda's foreign minister, Sam Kutesa. This is a case here in the U.S. The indictments were unsealed yesterday by the U.S. Department of Justice. Allegedly, a Chinese individual who operated an NGO based in Virginia in the U.S. and in Hong Kong, and also affiliated with the UN, made these bribe payments on behalf of an unnamed Chinese oil company based in Shanghai. The president of Chad allegedly received $2 million, and Uganda's foreign minister, Sam Kutesa, allegedly received $500,000, which was wired from a U.S. bank to an account in Uganda, which was designated by Mr. Kutesa himself. Allegedly, these monies, the bribe, was to try to gain favorable concessions in the oil and energy industry in Chad and Uganda, and in the banking and finance sector as well in Uganda. The U.S. alleges in the indictment that the conspiracy, at least involving Uganda, started in October 2014. Obviously, this is critical because that is the time when Sam Kutesa had just taken over as president of the United Nations General Assembly. And some of you readers or viewers may remember that the Black Star News reported on several articles in 2014 involving Sam Kutesa and his alleged involvement in past corruption schemes. At that time, in 2014, in fact, I believe it was September 14, the Black Star News reported that Sam Kutesa, through his company, NHAS, which stands for Entebbe Handling Services, had received or earned as much as $30 million from the United Nations from a contract that NHAS had with the UN. And Kutesa had not disclosed his ownership of NHAS to the UN when he received that UN contract about 7 years prior to our reporting. We reported that over a 5-year period, he had earned as much as $30 million. And in that article, we actually linked to the invoices on the UN's website showing the invoices that NHAS had submitted and that the UN apparently had paid out. When we published that story, the United Nations disabled the links to the invoices, but the article still remains online on blackstarnews.com, and it's been also carried by other news outlets. We bring this up to say that it was widely known that Kutesa was a high-risk candidate to represent the African continent as president of the UN General Assembly. And now with this unsealed indictment, it turns out that our reporting was headed in the right direction. We suspected that Mr. Kutesa would abuse his office as president of the UN General Assembly. According to the U.S. indictment, Mr. Kutesa schemed with an individual named Patrick Ho, that is a Chinese individual, who was the front individual for the oil company. And allegedly, the payments did not occur until Mr. Kutesa's term had expired as the General Assembly President and he had returned to Uganda. In the wire payments to Mr. Kutesa, Mr. Ho explained the payments in a number of ways. In some instances, he explained it as a donation to a foundation of Kutesa's own choice. At another instance, he explained it as support for General YOWERI Museveni's presidential re-election campaign. But according to the U.S. indictment, the payment was actually a bribe, and it was actually made after General Museveni had already been re-elected. And obviously that's a reference to the election that General Museveni stole from Dr. Kizza Besigye last year. I would also like to read one other item actually from the indictment itself. And this is how it reads. This is from the copy of the indictment, which has been posted on the website of the United States Department of Justice. As alleged in the complaint, the Uganda scheme began in or about October 2014, when H.O., and that refers to Patrick Ho, the Chinese individual, when H.O. met at the UN in New York with the Ugandan foreign minister who had recently begun his term as the 69th president of the UN General Assembly. H.O., purporting to act on behalf of the energy NGO, met with the Ugandan foreign minister and began to cultivate a relationship with him. During the year that the Ugandan foreign minister served as PGA stands for President General Assembly, H.O. and the Ugandan foreign minister discussed a, quote, strategic partnership, end quote, between Uganda and the energy company for various business ventures to be formed once the Ugandan foreign minister completed his term as PGA and returned to Uganda. In or about February 2016, after the Ugandan foreign minister had resumed his role as foreign minister of Uganda, and his in-law, this is a reference to General Museveni, of course, and his in-law had been re-elected as the president of Uganda, the Ugandan foreign minister solicited a payment from H.O., purportedly for a charitable foundation that he wished to launch. H.O. caused a $500,000 payment to be wired to an account in Uganda designated by the Ugandan foreign minister through a bank in New York. In his communications, H.O. variously referred to this payment as a, quote, donation, end quote, to the re-election campaign of the president of Uganda, parentheses, who had already been re-elected, end parentheses, and as a, quote, donation, end quote, to, quote, support, end quote, the Ugandan foreign minister. In fact, this payment was a bribe to obtain business advantages for the energy company in its efforts to secure contracts and ventures in Uganda's financial and energy sectors. H.O. also provided the Ugandan foreign minister, as well as the president of Uganda, with promises of future benefits, including proposing to partner with both officials' family businesses in potential joint ventures. In exchange, the Ugandan foreign minister assisted the energy company in obtaining business in Uganda, including by facilitating the energy company's interest in potentially acquiring a bank. That's from part of the U.S. Justice Department indictment, which was unsealed yesterday. Now, this individual, Patrick Ho, his full name actually is Cheihk Patrick Ho. He was arrested on Friday last week. Another individual arrested in this alleged scheme, actually Patrick Ho was arrested on Saturday. The other individual arrested in the scheme is Cheihk Tidiane Gadio, who was arrested on Friday. And he is the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Senegal. And he apparently was the alleged intermediary for Mr. Ho with President Idriss Debby, who allegedly received the $2 million bribe. And Mr. Gadio, the former Foreign Minister of Senegal, allegedly received $400,000 for his work in this bribery scheme. This is all we have to report for now. We're in touch with the U.S. State Department and the Justice Department, and if there's any update, obviously, we'll let our viewers and readers know. There's a question as to, is Mr. Sam Kutesa, would he still be allowed to return to the United States? He was in the U.S., I believe, last week for the meeting between the U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and Ministers of Foreign Affairs from African countries. That was on November 16 and 17. And there's a photograph online showing Mr. Kutesa posing, or rather shaking, Mr. Tillerson's hand. We've contacted the State Department to inquire about Mr. Kutesa's visa or re-entry eligibility to the United States. The Justice Department, the State Department referred us to the Justice Department. We also contacted the United Nations and the office of the current president of the UN General Assembly, issued a statement to the Black Star News, distancing himself with Mr. Kutesa and saying the U.S. Justice Department has not contacted the current UN General Assembly president regarding any allegations of financial impropriety. This is all we have to report for now. We'll update you when more information becomes available. Thank you, sisters and brothers.